This is a connect the dots recording where I'm going to read from various different authors. This is for anybody who's interested in stimulants like alcohol, vodka, tobacco, cannabis, things like that, and how that relates to psychiatry and corporations. So we're going to start off with a quote by Bertrand Russell. Diet, injections, and injunctions will be combined from very early in life to produce the sort of character and the sort of beliefs that the authorities consider desirable. And serious criticism of the powers that be will become psychologically impossible. That's Bertrand Russell, a committed tobacco smoker. Next one. This next quote is from Stanley Milgram. He's a psychologist who worked on he studied authority and the psychological effects of giving people power and authority. Stanley writes, or he might have said this, never forget that 2/3 of people would shock you to death just because someone in charge told them it was for a good reason. The disappearance of a sense of responsibility is the most far-reaching consequence of submission to authority. So for those of you who'd like to understand responsibility as it relates to opportunity, there's nothing responsible about using force and attacking someone or shocking someone or drugging someone. That's not responsibility. So the response to another human being is not to attack them or shock them or manipulate them in any way. But that's what goes on. Next quote. This is for those of you who might have if you've ever written a letter to someone trying to get them to do what you want. Blackmailing, mandating, coercing, enforcing an object into someone's body who has clearly said they do not want it because you demand they do for your own comfort and pleasure. What does that sound like? So, I'll repeat, forcing an object into someone's body who has clearly said they do not want it because you demand they do it for your own comfort and pleasure. So the irresponsible person wants comfort and pleasure and security, and they demand that another person put an object in their body, such as a needle, some kind of drug. This next one is from Dr. Rudolf Steiner. He's a Christian mystic and clairvoyant, founder of the Waldorf schools. Steiner writes, I have told you that the spirits of darkness are going to inspire their human hosts, in whom they will be dwelling, to find a vaccine that will drive all inclinations towards spirituality out of people's souls when they're very young. That's Dr. Rudolf Steiner. This next one is from Peter R. Bregan. I'll take my headphones off. German psychiatrists proposed the extermination of mental patients before Hitler came to power. So mental patients were exterminated prior to Hitler coming to power. Then in Nazi Germany, organized psychiatry implemented involuntary eugenical sterilization and euthanasia, ultimately killing up to 10,000 German mental patients. The 6 psychiatric euthanasia centers utilize medical professionals, fake death certificates, gas chambers disguised as showers, and the mass burning of corpses. Psychiatrists from the euthanasia program, Psychiatrists from the euthanasia program also participated in the first formalized murders in the concentration camps. Inmates were diagnosed on euthanasia forms and sent to the psychiatric euthanasia centers. These facilities later provided the training, personnel, and technology for the larger extermination camps. Medical observers from the United States and Germany at the Nuremberg trials concluded that the Holocaust might not have taken place without psychiatry. Peter Bregan writes, this paper summarizes psychiatric participation in events leading to the Holocaust and analyzes the underlying psychiatric principles that anticipated, encouraged, and paved the way for the Nazi extermination program. The first time I read that, I had a hard time reading that without getting emotional. It almost choked me up. Next one. This one's by Dr. Thomas Saz. I'm not sure how you pronounce his last name. He writes, for more than 50 years I have maintained that mental illnesses are counterfeit diseases, non-diseases, that coerced psychiatric relations are like coerced labor relations, slavery, or they are like coerced sexual relationships, rape. I've spent the better part of my professional life criticizing the concept of mental illness, objecting to the practices of involuntary institutional psychiatry, and advocating the abolition of psychiatric slavery and psychiatric rape. This next quote is by Geshe Kelsang Gyatso. He says, generate compassion for lowly beings, and especially avoid despising or humiliating them. Beware, offending a holy being is worse than dying, therefore be honest and straightforward. This next quote's by Lauren Tenney, PhD. She writes, I am paraphrasing here, but legally defined, deadly force is any action that causes death or serious bodily injury. An example is a psychiatric takedown, an injection. A deadly weapon is any substance or device that is known to cause death or serious bodily injury. By way of example, since we know that substances such as drugs or devices such as mechanical restraints and electroshock machines are known to cause death and serious bodily injury, they can be seen as deadly weapons. Therefore, those who have survived restraints, drugs, electroshock, etc., or people who identify as psychiatric survivors, are also people who are survivors of deadly force with deadly weapons. It's Lauren Tenney. This next one's by Pete Alex Harris at Scavenger Ethic. He writes, if you don't accept that bodily autonomy is an essential unconditional liberty, it's a waste of time talking to you at all. No other liberties survive without that one, more fundamental than property rights. If you don't own yourself absolutely, you own nothing. That includes your mind and your body, your soul. This one's by Ronley Plunkett. He writes, I now believe that what was then labeled as bipolar was really high anxiety coupled with hormones, and that if my family had different resources, I might have been saved from years of taking medication. This next quote's by Macalester Bell. I've spoken of her book before, Hard Feelings. She writes, the person who contemns excellently will make it clear to the target why she holds him in contempt. This explicitness, while socially awkward, offers an additional defense against the charge of manipulation and coercion. We have Justice Sonia Sotomayor. You are not entitled to disagree until you understand. And then there's a quote by Doug Shadle on malicious persuasion attempts fraud. He says, Victims don't ask a lot of questions, they answer a lot of questions. Victims don't look for reasons why the offer is a scam, they look for reasons why it's legitimate. Victims are not readers, and readers are not victims. Victims do not read the paperwork. Victims want the aggressor to tell them what the paperwork says. To avoid these scams, be a reader so you don't end up a victim. And that's Doug Shadle on malicious persuasion attempts fraud. This next excerpt is, I'm going to read the dictionary definition of cartel. So a cartel is an association of manufacturers or suppliers with the purpose of maintaining prices at a high level, so expensive, and restricting competition. In quotes is the Colombian drug cartels. Historically, it's a coalition or cooperative arrangement between political parties intended to promote mutual interest. And finally, a quote about good people by William March, author of The Bad Seed, the Empathy Trap. He writes, good people are rarely suspicious. They cannot imagine others doing the things they themselves are incapable of doing. So I hope you got something out of this. I come from the school of thought of I'm okay, you're okay. I'm okay, man. I don't need what you have to offer, especially if you insist. The stronger that you insist that I take your medicine, the more suspicion I have for you. And I don't have any suspicion towards you, but by default I'm not suspicious. But if you're going to insist, and if you're going to push an expensive drug on me, and you're going to do that repetitively, and you're going to use the police to do that, I'm going to have to be a little more bad. You have earned my suspicion.